Hi there, my name's Ed Jones. I'm a saxophonist and composer and educator, and I've been living in London for the last 40 years, and I'm here to talk about a new recording that I've been involved with the Norwegian drummer Emil Karlsen, and the album is coming out this Friday, so in a couple of days. We've literally just got the copies and we're really happy about it, obviously. And this is it. This is the cover. We've had a prototype of this knocking around for a little while, but this is the real thing. And the album's called From Where Light Falls, and a little bit more about that later on. Quite a few of you out there have been sort of asking me, sending me kind of like little questions on social media and email, kind of when's the album out, what's it sound like. We put up little tasters of what it sounds like as we go along, but then a couple of you have been asking questions, so how did you go about making the album, and it felt maybe appropriate to do a little quick short talk about how we got to actually make the recording and stuff coming up out of that. So we both met at Leeds Conservatoire a couple of years ago. Emil was on the undergraduate course and was already playing, very active in a lot of college bands, and also outside college, was already active on the jazz and improvised music scene in this country. He's doing quite a few gigs locally and nationally, and of course internationally in his own country and in Europe. So he was already in a way kind of out there and doing it, but also studying at the same time. Well, you know, we're all studying really. I'm still studying actually. So in that way we are all students of the music, continue to be. Anyway, he actually put a gig on with myself, Dave Kane, great double bass player from Leeds, and Matthew Bourne on keyboards, and we did a improvised 40-minute set at a place called Hyde Park Book Club in Leeds last year, just before the first lockdown, about a month before the first lockdown. And the gig went great. It was a great gig. I really enjoyed the gig, and hopefully we'll be able to get to do it again as a quartet. But out of that, I think when we came back to college this last September, beginning of October, bumped into Emil, and he was already then by that point doing the master's course. He just started the master's course, and he suggested that we get together every Monday. I was up there on Monday, and at the end of the day we would get together and have a play together. And so we sort of booked up these rooms each week and started to just play together, and very, very quickly it felt like something was happening. There was definitely some we were making some music together, which was really unusual and very, very engaging when you listen back to it. There was some definite things that were going on, real kind of natural communication between us. I think that's how I'd best describe it. So we were just recording this on our phones, and then at some point Emil said, well, why don't we record this properly? You know, I've got a bit of gear, I've got some good mics, and just, you know, stick it up in the room and kind of. So what you hear on the album is kind of very natural sound of us playing in a room together. There's a couple of different rooms, but basically each time it's essentially two microphones in the room, so it's really old school, and in that way it really captures the room sound and what was happening in the room at that point. So we started to do this across October and November and going into December, and none of us, I think, were really thinking about these are recordings. We were just kind of trying to document the process really. And by the time we got to November, we moved into a slightly bigger room to just see if we could make any improvement on the sound. So we moved into 219 at Leeds Conservatoire, and I hasten to add, actually, at this point, at all points we were socially distanced. Emil would we would both walk into the room, masks on, and we were pretty much over 2 meters apart from each other at all times. So it was all recorded really with under COVID restrictions, but with compliance with COVID regulations at the time. And we, what was really interesting at that time was the fact there was nothing going on in the evenings after we finished playing, because basically we'd come out and, under normal circumstances, we'd probably go to the pub and have a chat and, have a couple of pints, but you couldn't even do that. I mean, all of that was kind of closed, and so we would literally play and go say goodnight to each other and go our different ways, me back to where I was staying and Emil back to his house, and that became a regular Monday night meeting and event, really. And I have to say, it's definitely one of the things that kept my sanity through that period kind of going, because it was it was a difficult time for everybody, difficult time for musicians, because this was obviously an opportunity where we could carry on playing and communicating as musicians. So it became a bit of a kind of I don't know, it felt like a life support system at the time in a way, because everything else was shut down and there was no chance of playing with other people apart from this kind of situation. So, it was very, very welcome, and also really interesting to start a new project with someone who I hadn't really played with very much before, and develop this kind of music as we went along. The interesting for me, listening back to it now, is that there's such a difference between the tracks we recorded or the track that we recorded in October that we chose to release, and the things that we recorded in November. By the time we get to December, it's kind of become quite a different music, even though there's a sort of thread of commonality obviously through it. And then we did some small recordings actually in early on in the year, around February, and which aren't on the album, and the music's moved on. Even then, even just from a couple of months of not playing together, the music had definitely absolutely moved on to somewhere else. So I hope you're going to enjoy this album. I'm really proud of the work that we did on this album, and it's very different from a lot of recordings that I've been doing. All of this music was completely improvised out of thin air, and very freely, and without any talking about what we were going to do, any written melodies, just from out of thin air and listening to each other, really. And so don't forget, it's Ed Jones, Emil Karlsen, From Where Light Falls, and it's out on FMR Records. If you want to purchase a copy, you can contact either me or Emil. We're on Facebook and all the usual social media things, Instagram. You can definitely find us, and if you want to purchase it from FMR, you can go to the website, which is www.fmr.co.uk, I believe. So thanks very much for checking in, and hope to see you soon. We are planning to actually go on the road with this during 2022, so we hope to see you then. Take care. Can I just mention a little bit more about this sleeve, which I forgot to do? Anyway, so apart from being a fabulous drummer, Emil is also a very, very talented visual artist and also graphic designer. And so he put this design for the CD together, and this very amazing but very enigmatic cover. He sent me quite a few photos actually, but this is the one that I was like, wow, this looks amazing. And then we were sort of like looking for the album title, and we didn't have an album title. We just had these tracks which were labeled by the date they were recorded in. Very typical. So no titles at all, and he's like, well, what are we going to call the album? So actually, without this album cover, I just was sort of contemplating it one day and thinking about what it looked like, and it it definitely, for me, summed up a visual connection somehow of that time, because when we were recording in the evenings, we'd come out and it was, you know, it was dark. There was no, it become, it was nighttime. It was the end of the day, and it was deserted. And so already this kind of photo was evoking the kind of atmosphere that was around as we were leaving the building after each time we recorded. And it seemed to tie in really well with the music on the album. So yeah, that's a little bit about how the title of the album came about, From Where Light Falls, and also this wonderful design as well.